Welcome to You Are Intuitive, a series of refreshing interviews that features candid, intimate, and grounded conversations about developing and using intuition in the real world. I am Dana Mahachek, and I am thrilled to have you join me today. My guest today is the creative soulpreneur and boss goddess behind the Fifth Element Life, a conscious brand that connects body, mind, and spirit through symbolic and sacred talismans, as well as through the ever-popular Animal Kin Oracle card deck. Sarah Wilder combines her love of nature and design to intuitively create symbolic talismans, tools, and teachings for self-reconnection, which help to focus the mind and reconnect people to their true nature. Sarah's purpose is to empower women to tell and own their stories with pride, to express themselves honestly, and to provide sacred tools to guide them through uncharted energetic territories. Led by her philanthropic heart, Sarah's intention is to work closely with a range of native and farmed animals across the world, learning from them and supporting sanctuaries and organizations dedicated to kindness and animal advocacy. Sarah is also a best friend, a mother, daughter, teacher, and student. Her down-to-earth approach to life and business sees her not only becoming a leader in her industry, but also, more importantly, the leader of her own life. Sarah prides herself on being just like her customers, searching for meaning and reconnection in everything. She loves hip-hop dancing, drawing, and she feels most at home amongst the trees watching the birds. I was so thrilled to be able to speak with Sarah about her own experiences with intuition, and I hope that you can see yourself reflected in Sarah's story. Thank you for being here, and enjoy the conversation. Hey, Sarah, thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to chat with you about everything related to intuition.
Thanks for having me. It's exciting.
Yeah. So this is a question I like to start every interview off with because it's obvious, but I'm kind of surprised at the answers that have come up.
Yeah.
And that's basically whether you consider yourself to be intuitive.
Yeah, I do. I think everyone is in some sense. It's just a matter of whether you're conscious to your intuitive pulls. So yeah, if anyone ever says that they're not intuitive, I call bullshit, because I think everyone has the ability to tap into it. It's just whether you want to or not, essentially.
Yeah. Or whether you've maybe learned how to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're curious enough to learn how to tap into it, but it is always there in my book.
And have you always considered yourself to be intuitive then? Like, has that been something that's been since day one, or?
I don't think I knew what it was. I guess there was always an element of me feeling like I knew stuff before I learned it, if that makes sense, to be true. So so one thing, and it's funny now because it's getting mirrored back to me through my son, is that he's 4.5, and his response to pretty much everything that I tell him is, I know.
Oh, really?
And so it's just like, you do have a knowing of certain things. You have a feeling when you're going into a situation, or when you have to make a decision on something. There is always a sort of a knowing in what feels right to you, and you don't always act on it. So I guess I've always had that feeling, but it probably wasn't until maybe I was more interested in, or more open to learning more about it in my teens, and I was exposed to a lot of intuitive women who practiced intuitive new age things in front of me. So my mum and my auntie would read tarot together, and my mum would do amazing what was she calling it, psychic artwork. So my house was like covered in all these different beings that she was just like channeling. So I was always exposed to things like that, which are kind of, I guess, out of the norm.
Yeah.
But that showed me that there was another way of living,
Mm-hmm.
and that there were kind of no rules, and there was this whole other thing out there that you can tap into,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you want to.
Yeah. And that's really interesting too, because I know a lot of the people that I've spoken with for this series, you know, there was definitely no psychic artwork on the walls. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
It was something that was either like actively a taboo subject, or it was just, there was ignorance around it. Nobody even had the language to speak about it. So it's really amazing that you kind of grew up in this environment where there were these kind of new age metaphysical things. So it was kind of like a natural step into tapping into your own intuition.
Exactly. It was, you know, lining up my pathway for my career journey and my life journey, I guess, because the first stage of my life was, my parents were both commercial artists. So I was taught about basically creativity and being able to live off your own creativity. So that was a beautiful tool that I was gifted from them. Mm-hmm. And then moving out from that, when my parents separated, and I guess I was in my mid to late teens, that's when my mum was doing a lot of her spiritual shifting and growth. And that's when I was exposed to more of that, you know, the psychic artwork and that kind of thing. So that showed me, again, this whole other spiritual side of myself. And so I've kind of obviously now just grouped both of those things together. So I was very influenced, I guess, in that sense. But it was kind of like permission for me. I never really felt hindered by those things, and they never, I didn't have huge fears around them, because I guess I was already exposed to it and knew that it was something that I could safely do, and that there would be people that I could attract that were into that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, and like, talk about a leg up. Like, my partner is an artist. Well, my sister, my father, my partner. I have many artists around me.
Yeah.
But for most of them, well, I should say specifically for my partner, he definitely did not grow up believing that you could make a living off your creativity. So to have that gift from your parents, them setting that example, and then have that openness and that permissiveness around intuition, that's totally a leg up. It feels like totally. Super advantage coming into this, coming into this field. Do you feel that you had, like, I'm going to put it in air quotes, but like an awakening experience, or like a particular event, something that happened where like the switch of your intuition was flipped on? Yeah, definitely. So
I guess for me, I just kind of mapped it out because I was trying to get my head around my timeline before this. And it was funny that from, I think, around the age 22, that's when my father died of cancer. Within 2 weeks of finding out he had passed, and I was the eldest child, and I had to organize his funeral and go through all this really big, heavy, like, I had to step up and take charge of this situation. So for me, that was a huge awakening moment, because it completely cracked me open, and it made me reevaluate my life. And I guess it redirected me, because I guess I was going on a path of, you know, working for somebody else, moving through a career in fashion and that type of thing. And I still did pursue that, but it kind of was like, well, you know, Dad did what he loved every day. So, and, you know, I want to have my own business, and I always have been entrepreneurial since I can remember. I had lots of little businesses in primary school and stuff. I was always making things and trying to sell them. So that was a big, strong calling for me to get back in alignment with that. And so I started another business prior to the one that I have now. And that was sort of like my healing business. It was sort of like finding my feet. It was like a practice business. So I learned about, I learned a lot about business and about myself through that process. And so that kind of was an awakening, in a sense that it redirected me to do more of what I loved and incorporate that more into my day-to-day life, and to work towards something that was building my dream and not somebody else's. And then sort of as a I guess over the years of going down that road, then I was being I guess more called to my spiritual truth. And that's when I went, I have this other timeline in my life of wanting to work with animals a lot. So there's always this like fashion, accessories, and then animals. And that's been like two streams, throughout my whole life. So at the same time, I was juggling this business, a full-time job, and also volunteering, working with rehabilitating native animals and doing a course and studying that kind of stuff. So I was just trying to find my feet, but also fill my life with all the stuff that I loved and felt called to do. And then so that led me to then go vegetarian. And I think that was another thing. A lot of lifestyle choices were tweaked, in my mid-20s, when I started realizing that, drinking and smoking and partying and eating really poorly was not me looking after myself, essentially, and having to take on all these other things. I needed to be healthy and be on top of it. So I think going vegetarian was it was like a slow shift, but again, it really heightened my my intuitive self. It kind of like fully detoxed my body, and I just felt more me than I had ever felt. So I guess that was another thing that, I implemented in my life that kept redirected me on this path. And then another one after a few years after that was the birth of my son, or falling pregnant and going through the pregnancy journey and then giving birth to him. And that kind of rebirthed me again. So there's lots of, it's lifestyle, it's grief, and then it's like complete life change. All these things have happened just to keep shifting me, and I'm just having, to continually surrender to the situation, and be open to receiving whatever's coming, for me. And that's when the Fifth Element Life was born. It was throughout that pregnancy. That's when the seed was planted. And and I developed that over, a year or so of my motherhood journey, and then I birthed that business. And so they've kind of been hand in hand. The Fifth Element Life is me as a mum, essentially.
Can I ask? Okay, go ahead.
No, yeah. And
finish
then again, as you know, a few weeks ago, I lost my pet cat tragically, and that again has completely cracked me open again. And so I feel like I've been jolted on another pathway of my life, which I'm just newly exploring. And it's not really something I can quite understand yet, but I'm definitely being pulled in ways that, I didn't think I would. But it's definitely reconnected me with my creativity again. And I'm really wanting to create more stuff, and probably different stuff to what I have been creating too. So again, there's just been all these things, layers. It's a layer.
Next level. Can I ask you about like when you received, first of all, the idea or the inspiration to create the Fifth Element Life? How did you get that, or like how did it come through? Like what's your primary Claire? Like, did it come as a knowing or a visual or a little mix of both?
I don't know. It was like so it was just at a transitional point in my life where I was absolutely ready to leave the fashion industry. I no longer connected with it. That was definitely not who I was anymore. But I knew I wanted to work for myself, and I knew I wanted to still create things. And there was actually a ring that my mum had bought me that year, around the time that I think it might have been a couple of months before I fell pregnant. And it was funny because I'd wear it and it was very hippie looking. Like it had, it was like a chunky hippie ring that I'd wear to work every day. And, I'd have to wear these like, bright lipstick and like little heels and be completely like fashionista from Sydney and live that life. But I had this sort of like, bohemian gypsy ring on, and it was kind of just reminding me of that's who I actually was, but I couldn't be that person yet. And so I'd look at it every day and I'd just be like, it was kind of like that reminder to me of who I who I am. So that's when I guess it was like this light bulb thing of me wanting to, because I'd created jewelry in my previous business as well. It was just more textile based.
Okay.
So there's always something about me and jewelry, or you know, throughout my whole life that was, you know, my calling to create, you know, a self-expression type thing. And I don't know, I can't even tell you what happened, but I know that the elements played a huge role. So it was almost like I started piecing each element of myself back together. So I was tweaking my lifestyle choices. I was getting back in alignment with my passions and my creativity. I was wanting, you know, my surroundings to be different and my environment to be different. And so there was this, it was almost like this, you know, the fifth element was guiding all the other elements into place for me. And obviously it was also my favorite movie. So it was just like this thing, it's the supreme being, you know?
Yeah.
And so I don't know, it just sort of was like, I think I'm just going to make these rings, and they're all going to have a meaning, and they're going to represent something that you desire. And it's going to be called the fifth element life. And that's where I left it. I was like, okay, seed is planted. I shut down my business. I left my job. I dedicated, you know, a year of my life to just being a mother, being with my son, and just letting it sit and ripen.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it wasn't until, I guess, about a year in with Billy that I then really, well, it was actually, I probably developed it slowly over that time, but alongside, it wasn't so much the product that I wanted to get right, but it was more like I had to just go on this journey. And I remember, you know, every time we'd have a nap, I'd sit on my computer in my bedroom and like I'd set up a little makeshift office there, and I'd just research stuff, and I'd just go down this rabbit hole, and I'd be reading and exposing myself to all this, you know, amazing, crazy information that it was like feeding my soul. I was just like, you know, it was just, I don't know, just showing me all the things that I was really thirsty to learn about. And that sort of, I guess, re-energized me and gave me my power then to birth this product in the right way and coming from the right place with the right information and foundation behind it.
And the right intention too, right? Like
exactly.
It's almost like laying the energetic foundation for it.
Absolutely.
And I think, especially in kind of today's world, that we miss that a lot. Like that we're so quick, we just try to rush and get it, you know, launch and get yourself out there. But without that energetic foundation being laid, it's not the same, right?
It was so important to me to do that and have that, because you can see now how, you know, it was an instant success purely. I was never hindered by anything. I didn't ever have a lull in sales. It's just been a steady growth because I did all that, and it was came from such a pure, organic place. And, you know, it was like a reflection of my life journey. And, you know, I was and still am that woman that, you know, breathed, you know, life into all these things. And they came from a very intentional place as opposed to just creating product and getting it out because I need money or whatever. So, you know, that's always been my foundation, and always something that I check in with now too, whenever creating anything.
Do you feel now that that your business, because it is a huge success, well, at least from the outside looking in, it's like, wow, Sarah, that's so amazing.
It's still, to me, it's still a baby. Like because there's been some setbacks again in my personal life in the last 2 years. I feel like, you know, for me being inside the business, it hasn't grown to the place I want it to be, or feel like, you know, that it should be, even though it doesn't exist, right? There's no rules or wrong or right way to do this, but I definitely feel I had to step back from it a bit to heal myself and go through, I went through a really big separation a couple of years ago, and so it's been rebuilding myself again. This is another one of those situations where I basically had to relearn who I was as an individual, because I'd been in this partnership for 11 years. And so my whole adult life I was supported by this, you know, had this man in my life, and so it was like, who am I? So I had to really, really, really get get deeper back into myself and rebuild myself as an individual, which has been an amazing journey. But again, it's the business not suffered, but it survived as opposed to thrived to me because I wasn't present. Fully present. Yeah,
and I guess what I was going to ask about that too is like, because when you were first birthing it and allowed yourself that time and that space and that like just a period of being really intentional, and that was kind of before you knew what it was going to be like, or like how it was going to be received. But now that it is, you know, this successful brand and a successful business, do you ever kind of feel that pressure or the need to rush or the need to launch things? Because
all the time.
So because, how do you cultivate your intention then, like, or how do you pull back and be like, no, it's okay, I need to work on the energetics of this rather than like go launch?
I guess I've figured that I work quite seasonally. So that was one thing that my intuition has taught me, is to honor where I'm at. And if, you know, the thing that comes to mind is like pushing shit up a hill. Like, it's so hard. Don't bother. Don't try and do that, because you're forcing something that isn't meant to go there right, you know, now. And if I had launched my business 2 years prior, it would be a completely different business. So you've always got to honor the timing of everything. And that's a really huge lesson for me as well, because there have been things that I've, you know, tried to just rush through, and you learn pretty quickly that that doesn't resonate as deeply or isn't as effective, or it doesn't feel as good to you. Or it doesn't fulfill you at the level, you know, because either people aren't ready for it, or you're not ready for it, or whatever it is. You know, there have been ideas that I've had years ago that are perfect now, but back then I really, really wanted them to exist, and, you know, I maybe tried them and then they, you know, fell flat because it wasn't ready. And a lot of the time, your ideas do have to, you know, sit and wait for you.
Simmer.
So I guess, I mean, there have been more pressures because, you know, my brand is more established. You know, I guess people expect more from me in that sense, to always be creating and growing and expanding and offering, you know, myself and whatever. And, I do that to a point, but then I really, you know, I let people know that I need to be, you know, working on myself at the same time. So I'm never going to, you know, over commit myself, you know, to the, you know, last year, I think I said no to 90% of the interviews or whatever that people wanted to hear from me, and asking me, you know, we want to interview about self-care. And I'd be like, well, I'm not good at that right now. So I'm good at that by saying no to you, but that's pretty much, you know. But you know what I mean? Like, it's
self-care by saying no.
But yeah, it's just, you know, sometimes you do have to make tough decisions, but they do eventually pay off. But and I guess you always know what you need. It's just a matter of letting go of the ego side of it all, and not having to, you know, the whole facade of me having to show up every day and present and create and grow is, it's not real. I've created that, like having to, you know, work at the pace that I'm working at and create at the pace that I'm creating at. Nobody else sets that tone or that level than me. So I can dictate, I guess, if I want to pull it back, or and when and where I want to do it.
Well, and I feel like just being like an outsider looking into your business, but I feel that your authenticity and your transparency and your like human vulnerability actually strengthens your brand. Like whenever you're saying, you know, guys, I can't keep up this pace, or I have to take a step back. I think that everyone's just like, yeah, go Sarah, you're so real. I really resonate with that, right? And I think that for anyone who's maybe starting their own entrepreneurial journey, just to know and to see someone like you modeling that it's like not only okay to be a human in the business, but like being a human and having that transparency can actually work for you rather than against you, right?
Totally. I think that I don't know, I respect people that do that and don't bullshit me, because I have a really great bullshit radar and you can tell it from a mile away. And I think as an intuitive person, you can definitely tap into when someone's just tricking you or putting on a show for you. And it's all smoke and mirrors. And, you know, to an extent, you know, your online presence is a prettier picture of your life, but I'll never deny the fact that, you know, I'm going through a shit time and I need to take a step back in my business and I've been neglecting my business or whatever. Like that, to me, if I heard somebody saying that to me, I'd be like, fuck yeah, because I'm doing that too. And I thought, you've given me permission to do that. And we're not robots, you know, and we're not, you know, we don't have this endless bountiful amount of money dropping from the sky to support you. You know, if you're struggling, then that's okay. And, you know, I think whenever I look to any people in business or any people that inspire me, it's because they just were honest and open and, you know, weren't afraid to be vulnerable and share the reality of, you know, their journey.
Yeah. And it reminds me of a quote. It was from a book I read by Vanessa Van Edwards. It's called Captivate. I'm like, what is the name of that book? Captivate. But I'm like, come on, intuition.
Yeah.
Like,
drop it in. Drop it in.
Yeah. I'm opening my crown chakra. That's not at all what I was doing. But it's called Captivate. And there's just this one section she said about how we all spend so much time and energy trying to be perfect. But at the same time, we don't like people who are like fake and trying to be perfect, right? So it's like this thing that we're all like, oh, we got to keep going, we got to make it better, it's got to be perfect. But then we're like, that person's really fake, phony.
And then you judge them for being perfect. Like, what?
I know, makes no sense, right?
No, it doesn't. We're silly people.
We are silly people. Can I ask you, Sarah, how you actually receive intuition predominantly? Like what sort of channels it comes through, or how you know that it is your intuition versus like what you want to hear or what you want to happen or fear?
I was thinking about this. I don't know exactly how I get it, but it's kind of like it's kind of like a thought and a feeling mixed together. So there'll be like this information that passes in, and then it's almost like my body filters it, and either it sits in the right place or it doesn't. So you can kind of then start to discern whether it's your egoic mind or your monkey mind just making shit up, or it's something that feels like, oh, that's feels right. So I haven't studied or like gone deeper into, you know, fully tapping into how, you know, I receive messages and that kind of thing. But that, I guess that's what it feels like when I do get a hit. And even now, I guess I'm getting lots of information and downloads because I've been recently cracked open emotionally again. So I'm, you know, more vulnerable and open, and so there's a lot of new stuff coming in, and I still do struggle with discerning what it is. And I think sometimes you need to hear it a few times, or you need to like go a little bit off track to then be like, no, you're back here. And I still kind of do that. I still kind of fumble my way through, you know, decisions or pathways that I make, because I am so like, I hate saying that I'm busy, but I am actually very busy at the moment just because somehow this is what I do is I have like a lull and I have all this space and I have like this big restful kind of slower period, and then everything is piled into the, you know, a few months week. Of just like absolutely like I cannot even, like I think I did about 60 or 70 hour week last week, which is insane, but I don't do that often. But it was just kind of like, you know, everything just kind of piled in at the same time. And, you know, it's spring, it's that change of season. So maybe this is the time that I'm just supposed to like, you know, and I'm actually quite energized by it. I'm not overly tired, and I don't hate doing that. I kind of like working till midnight, but I know that that's not a sustainable thing, and there will come a period where I'll just slow down from that and not want to touch anything. yeah, so I'm still, I'm still trying to work through the things, but that's sort of, seems to be my process, I guess. It's just feeling into it and seeing how I feel, whether I'm being triggered or whether it feels right, even though it doesn't maybe quite make sense.
Yeah.
Logically.
Well, and I think a lot of people, even people who are kind of newer to tapping into their intuition, we all know what it's like to get like a bad vibe off of someone or going into like a certain place and just like feeling
absolutely
off.
Yeah, exactly.
And we also know what it feels like, you know, if you meet someone and you just like instantly hit it off, right? And even though you might not be able to like linguistically dissect why that is the case, like we all know what that feels like.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
because we're so good at reading energy, but you know, for our logical mind that maybe doesn't make sense. So our bodies just know, or our spirits just kind of know they're people.
Exactly. Yeah. I know you.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit, Sarah, about just your connection with animals and how you can kind of intuitively tap into that energy and those messages? Because I think out of all the people that I'm speaking to in this series, that's one thing that definitely stands out as unique about you is your connection to animal messages. Can you talk a little bit about how that developed for you?
I guess, I mean, we're all born animal lovers. Like, I don't know many kids that aren't, you know, drawn to certain animals, or all animals. My son's like a crazy bug boy in particular, and he loves cats too. So I guess I was always exposed to lots of animals throughout my life. My parents were both animal lovers, and I'm just trying to think what triggered it. I always wanted to be a ranger.
Okay.
And I don't know why, but maybe it was just because I like nature and I feel most connected to myself when I am in nature. And there's just something about the presence of an animal, because obviously they can't communicate verbally, but when you are in the presence of an animal, and all different kinds of animals have different energies too, it's almost just like you have permission to just be yourself and be still and be a human being as opposed to a human doing. Like, you're not like having to, you know, work with other people's like agendas and, you know, go. It's kind of like you sit with an animal, and this is what I would do. I'd always, my whole life, I've like sought out, you know, animal sanctuaries, or I've volunteered my time in rehab centers and that type of thing, because I just love being around them. They just, I don't know, I can't even explain. I don't know what I was in a past life to make me so connected in this way, and love doing that kind of stuff, because there's a lot of people that, you know, have a lot of fear around, you know, particular animals and that kind of thing. But I don't tend to fear many. I kind of feel like freaked out if things like fly at me, but I think that's just like a standard human reaction. And so I guess in my early 20s, I worked a lot with, a lot of native stuff in Australia, and I did lots of rescues. I worked particularly at the Australia Zoo Wildlife Hospital with the koalas, and so just spending hours with the koalas, and they're like the most wise. They're just like, they're like top 5. But there's just something like about their energy. They're just, you know, they're slow, they sleep all day, they just do the bare minimum, and they just know stuff. You know, every animal just knows so much more than we give them credit, and they all have a unique way of seeing the world. You know, their senses, you know, certain have, you know, there's you know, every kind of animal has a different sense that, you know, is really highlighted for them. So whether it be smell, sight, or whatever. So they really work to their strengths, and I think we can all learn a lot about their approach to their life, and that you know, not every human works the same way either, and it's all about learning and playing to your strengths in your life, and still you know, being a successful and an amazing person, even though you're not like XYZ. You know, you have your own unique view of the world. And so they kind of highlight that to me, and they have something that they can show us, you know, as individuals as well. And so I've always been interested, obviously, in animals and working with them and just spending time with them. And obviously, when I was, you know, cracking open spiritually and learning more about my own spirituality, they were my anchor. So I know that anytime I, you know, felt like I just needed to get out of my life and, you know, get away from the rat race and just be, and I would seek out nature and spend time with animals. I'd follow, you know, I'd always be on the lookout in the forest for certain birds, and I'd just sit there and, you know, watch them. And you know, there might be wallabies, and it's just like something so precious about how raw and present they are in their lives. So I guess they just kind of teach me about my true essence and my own nature, to look, by looking to them. And
well, I think it's really nice too to hear about that that experience, because I know, like, especially if you're learning about, say, intuition, and you learn like, oh, claircognizance, clairvoyance, clairsentience, and there's kind of like the main channels that are kind of like legitimately deemed intuitive, but then, you know, connecting with animals or connecting with nature, like
it's called zoomancy.
So and that those are other ways for people to tap in and tune in.
Totally.
And I think it's just
sorry,
go ahead.
I was just going to say that's one thing. I guess for me, I'm a very, like, all my signs are earth signs. Like I'm two Taurus, Capricorn, and a cusp of Aquarian. So I'm a very earthy person, very down to earth and wise. But the thing for me has been that I understand all the new age spiritual stuff, and I absolutely appreciate that there are, you know, multi-dimensions and many universes and many beings and all that kind of thing. But personally, it's not that I don't connect to them, because I know I do on some level, but it's not what I look to for guidance or reconnection. And so I'm more of a earth orientated intuitive, where I want to see it. I want it to be real in front of me in my human experience, to then be reminded of my spirit. So I think it's a really easy way for people who are a bit afraid of, you know, all those sort of multi-dimensional things, and the stuff that you can't see and isn't tangible, to go into nature. And that's why people are so drawn to crystals as well, because they're a physical thing that you can have in your home as a reminder, or, you know, as a link to something, or to an energy. And that's the same with animals as well. So there are many things on earth that can reconnect you to your own intuitive self and your and to your spirit as well.
And I love that you brought that up too, because I wasn't even thinking about the like predominantly having your natal chart be in the earth element compared to other people. But I do know, like, from the work that I was doing with people, like giving one-on-one readings and energy healings, I know that there was a lot of people who just didn't, like, you talk about fifth dimension and ascension and light beings and star seeds, and they're just like, no, like that will never be me, right? And I think it's so nice for anybody who's watching this or listening to this to just be like, oh, there's another avenue, or like another starting point that I can do something that actually feels real and
in
grounded.
This dimension.
Like I don't have to go anywhere.
No.
Or like astral travel or anything
everything's
like
connected.
That.
Everything's connected. Like, we are, you know, even though there are, you know, multi dimensions and that kind of thing, we're all linked. It's not like this, like, you know, I guess, you know, you can kind of visualize it as layers, but at the same time, like, we're having the same experience as them, but they're just doing it in a different, you know, it's kind of like there's no right or wrong, and there's no hierarchy of how this works. It's just about honoring what feels good to you and what feels right to you and what feels like a truth to you. And so if it's too hard for you to get your head around the fact, or live in your present life, and then think that you're a starseed from another planet, and you then have to integrate that somehow into your day-to-day life, then, and there are people that do that, and that's amazing, but majority of society don't understand that, and it's a lot harder for you to be present in your day-to-day life and enjoy it to its fullest potential when you have such resistance from everyone around you. So a really great starting point is the natural world that you live in, because they're connected to those dimensions too, like they're just reincarnated from other things. So essentially it's all the same stuff. It's just how it's packaged, essentially.
And what kind of calls to you or speaks to you, because I know for me, I have like no earth in my chart. I'm primarily water, water and air, but at the same time I don't know how to swim. Doesn't make sense to me.
Interesting.
But for me, like if I was told when I was younger, oh, like just go outside and play in the dirt, I'd be like, no freaking way. Like, no. I didn't like bugs. I didn't like, like I liked animals, but I didn't like getting dirty. I didn't like, like I didn't like spiders. I didn't like the chance of seeing a spider.
Totally.
No, I didn't like that at all. But for me, if you gave me a book on something, like that was my avenue. I'm like,
totally.
I'm in it to win it with this book.
There you go. Yeah.
But I love that we're talking about this, because it's a different path for every person. And I specifically love that you highlighted the fact that there's no right or wrong, but there's also no like better or worse. Like, absolutely. Oh, you're not going to be a real intuitive if you're starting on this track versus.
I think there's this created like kind of pseudo spiritual stuff where it's like, I'm a better person than you because I see everything that you don't see, or whatever. And it's fine to go down that journey, because I think everyone does do that. You have to kind of, there's like a scale, and when you jump from one end to the scale, you usually go to the complete opposite end to really feel that. And you can be a bit of a wanker for a while, but then you kind of, I don't know, you kind of settle a bit. Oh, I've done it too. I absolutely have done it too.
Raising my hand.
But it's a part of the process, right? It's like finding where you are on this line of where you feel most balanced. And so you can go to that end of the scale, and then eventually when you feel more confident in yourself, or more kind of yourself, essentially, you taper it back to integrate it into your day-to-day world, because it's very hard for people to live in that really top end scale for a long time and not feel way too much, or feel completely burdened by everything. So I do think people go on this big kind of spiral of working out where they sit on it,
and then just kind of coming back to center.
Because anytime I've ever, like, I guess have spoken to maybe an older generation, it's always like, oh, I went through that spiritual phase when I was in my whatever, and they've just they get it, but they don't essentially live it or like look it, if that makes sense. Like they're not
they're not waving the flag anymore.
They're not like wearing bells around their ankles and doing tarot every day. It's just like they work in the a normal kind of corporate job or whatever, but they just haven't a deeper understanding of the universe or themselves or whatever it is. And I think they're even though they may not seem to be spiritual people, they absolutely are, because they just know that feels right for them, and they're honoring that.
Yeah, definitely coming back home to themselves, right? Integrating it all in a way that feels right for them. I am so glad that we had this conversation. I really want to just thank you so much for being here and for sharing all of your earthly wisdom. I can feel the grounded down to earth vibes. I really appreciate them. And I'm sitting in my sister's basement.
Well, there you go. You had to go underground.
I am underground to be like kind of grounded. Yeah.
There you go.
And if people are looking to learn more about your work, or if they want to follow you online, where's the best place for them to do that, Sarah?
So I guess I'm most active on Facebook and Instagram, and that's The Fifth Element Life. And then thefifthelementlife.com is my website. where you can see my oracle cards and my artwork, and I offer readings each week which integrate animal messages. So yeah, that's where I am.
Yeah, thank you. And for people who aren't on your newsletter to receive those, can people get them just right on the blog?
They're just on my blog. Yeah.
Now, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you should still sign up for her newsletter, because every week when I get those readings, they're always just so spot on. It feels just like a validation for my own journey every week.
Yes, so. And that's what it is. Yeah, because we're all very, we're all on the same journey at the same time. And so, yeah, you just find your like-minded people, and anything that I'm feeling, I know is a kind of more of a global thing than just a personal thing.
Yeah, I feel like every week I need to respond and say, Sarah, please get out of my brain.
I get those responses.
I'm sure you do. Like, well, she probably has already received thousands of the same. Get out of my brain. Are you in my head? So I don't need to be that.
It is nice to know, because I guess that was one of the main things when I did start this business, was I felt disconnected from everyone and very isolated in the experience that I was going through. And so that connecting with people from all over the world going through similar journey was what got me through. So it is always nice to maintain that connection with the audience and with my peers in that sense, and hear from you guys. So yeah,
well, I'll be sure to write every week then.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again, Sarah, for being here.
No worries.
Take care.